If we can. And Mayor Halloran, you'd be pleased to know that I'm actually using a playbook for my notes from RIM, so as well as the two Blackberries that I have on my side here. First off, thanks both to all of those who are attending here, making a commitment on a Sunday to be in Montreal, sharing our passion in this field, and certainly to Canada, and the others for bringing this together. I want to talk a little bit about three things. I want to give you a little bit on a situational awareness, opportunity, and challenge, and then I'll introduce our panelist, Chief Mike Sullivan. Rick Turner from Alcatel, by the way, could not make it today. His young son had a sports-related injury yesterday, so he's spending time in the very good hospital, CHEO, Children's Hospital, Eastern Ontario in Ottawa. So our thoughts go to him and his young son. The center that I'm associated with, the program that I'm associated with, the Canadian Safety and Security Program out of Defence Research Development. It's a combination of three programs, of which the Police Research Centre is one. We began a journey with the responder community some years ago with the Police Research Centre. In 2004, with the federal government of the day and the economy, it looked like the wheels were falling off the centre. Some colleagues and I got some time and a little bit of resources from the National Research Council, and we were enabled to actually start something that would have some resources and respond to the needs of the community. And that, over time, has evolved, joined with some other programs, as I said, at DRDC, and gone from a few $100,000 a year to a combined program that looks at the broad needs of the public safety and security community of about $43 million a year. So we're reasonably well resourced to respond to the needs of that community. I don't know how many of you are really familiar with the responder community in Canada, and by that I mean police, fire, and emergency medical services. There's approximately 300,000 workers in that community. About one-third to a little bit more of them are volunteers, and the rest are full-time employees. And it represents a value or a cost to the communities, I guess, of about $20 billion a year. So it's quite large. The challenge from an industry perspective is it's very diversified. There are about 4,000 organizations out there, which go from very, very large, very well resourced, to quite small organizations. But it's an organization. It's a world that has vast needs and is rapidly changing. Just want to give you an example. I don't know how many of you actually use wikis, but part of the responder community now through portals is starting to use the wikis, starting to use these technologies to develop their statement of operational requirements and procedures. We defined many of the things that we were going to do in partnership in the past couple of years with CATA. They did a few studies with us, and one of the things that they said is you really need to focus on the mix between what the industry needs and what the responder community needs. And part of that is opportunities for test evaluation, or identifying what test and evaluation is involved with. And this year in June, we opened the Emergency Responder Test and Evaluation Establishment in Regina. Part of our role there is to bring together the responder community and the end user community, help them articulate their operational requirements and their statement of operations, so that we would have both the CONOPS and the statement of operations. From that, we or others can build test plans, and then we can have organized, transparent, and uniform testing across Canada for products from vendors, so that it would be we do it well, we do it once, and you have opportunities to sell, because providing opportunity to industry in this sector is very important to us. We're also working in the Regina community with the university there, the University of Regina, to set up the Canadian Centre for Public Safety and Policing, which will be a horizontal centre of excellence in the university. But we'll also be introducing something that is new and novel, at least in Canada and a little bit in the world, but it's more the teaching hospital concept for public safety. So we will be embedding practitioners right in the university and the learning process, much like you would see in a hospital. So we're trying to build the capacity for evidence-based research within the responder community. So much of what we see today is tech-enabled out in the responder community, and we've been working in that. I guess even before we actually understood what the public-private partnerships were, because what we looked at was to have a success, we needed the operators. We needed the responder community. We needed, in most cases, federal government labs or universities. And above all else, to have a successful outcome, we needed industry. So what we did is we put together these collaborations and the partnerships, and we probably have 100 or 200 actually successes out there of products and services now that are being sold successfully. And that model and those successes are valued not just within Canada, but also beyond our border. The social justice system in Canada, the democracy that we have, is seen as a model in many places. I was in Europe a couple of weeks ago, and it surprised me how much our European colleagues actually borrow from our system. So one of the advantages I think that we bring to industry is that through the public-private partnerships, the collaborations, you get enhanced visibility internationally. People actually see what you do and use us and our colleagues within the responder community as a trusted point of reference. I'd like to flip now to the long-term evolution test bed, LTE. 700 megahertz, use many words for this opportunity. But it is a project that's evolving in partnership with Alcatel. The Communications Research Centre in Ottawa is really the federal government driving force behind this, and they're looking at setting up the Canadian Interoperability Research and Test and Evaluation Centre, which my organization, the Canadian Safety and Security Partnership, is partnering in. LTE, for the responder community, the scope of this is quite large. We just did a study with IDC on just the land mobile voice radio, and we see approximately $2 billion worth of investment going on in Canada right now, and that study's available online. I think CATA has it up online, and so does CTIG. But if you look at the scope of that and you look at the potential for LTE in Canada, it is probably an equivalent investment. It may even be larger. I don't know whether anybody has scoped it out in great deal yet, but it's large. And what we're trying to do with both our facility in Regina and the facility in what we're starting with the test bed is make sure that we start doing the prep work, the introduction work, so that we can actually test services, products, practices, so that when it does come time for the responder community, the communities, the municipalities to actually buy those technologies, they're tested and they're evaluated in a way that has transparency for the community and certainly fairness for the vendor community. Ideally, that'll bring advantage to everyone, and including industry. And we have to do that. If you look at the economics right now of public safety, it is just getting so. It is becoming such a large component of the municipal budgets, a large component of the other budgets, that we have to do things in a much more organized, efficient, effective manner. So, what are the challenges that I see? One of the words that we don't use very often when we talk about leadership is courage. We need courage in some of these areas to let things develop, to let some of these broad national networks develop and get moving. We need trust. We can't have silos of excellence. We can't have groups that are not connected together. And above all else, we need collaboration. And certainly, from my perspective, with my organization, whether it be the LTE testbed or other opportunities, we really need to connect with industry. We need to bring industry more tightly to the table so that we can share the information and identify with much more agility and much faster the opportunity. So we have solutions which evolve a lot faster into this sector. It now gives me tremendous pleasure to introduce a colleague, a friend, someone I've known and worked with for a few years now in the interoperability area, in the communications area. Division Chief Michael Sullivan. Mike has been a real leader in this area, brings depth of expertise from his experience in the Ottawa Fire Services, and a real commitment and a real passion to this area. So, Mike, over to you.
Thanks, Steve. So, what really happened here is what can the first responder put on the table that would help this NLTE testbed out? And I really have to take you back a step. Does everybody here know about the 20 megahertz that first responders are receiving from Industry Canada? Anybody who doesn't know about the 20 megahertz? Couple? I'll talk to you afterwards because we always need those votes. So what's happened out of this is Industry Canada stepped up and they're going to give us 20 megahertz of broadband in the 700 megahertz category and allow us to build out a broadband network across Canada. It's in conjunction with the United States. The United States has to do the same thing, except we're not funded. We don't have $7 billion, and that's the second thing I'll speak about here. Anybody have any money? And I'll come and talk to them after this session quite properly to get that. So it's really about what we can put on the table and how we can help. One of the interesting things in all the discussions I've had, if you can't build something in a network, so you can't do it in the infrastructure, you can't do it through the security, you can't do it in the architecture, I still operationally have to be able to complete that. So if you unload some of my duties by turning that into your responsibilities, then my operationals get simple. If you create problems for me, my operations get harder and harder and harder. And the only way in the fire world, in the police world, in the paramedic world to solve operational issues is to throw more people, more resources at that. So that's not a suitable solution anymore. So we need the innovation. I'm delighted to see what I heard in this room this morning and this afternoon. It's absolutely astounding that we're headed in the right direction with sharing what we've built out across this country. And that's the key term I'd like to use here. So how could Ottawa help out with this? So what happened with Barry is I sat down with Barry and Alcatel and we had some frank discussions. Typically speaking, the municipalities own in the public safety world the best real estate available. And we don't share that. So the public safety towers are kept as public safety towers and never do we ever let anybody else on them. So the first commitment Ottawa made, I sat down with the deputy city manager of the city, had a frank conversation, and he said yes to most of the things I asked for, and I'll run those through for you now so you realize what Ottawa municipality is throwing out. And my challenge here is any other municipality is free to put that forward because we're about to utilize it right across the country. So first off, his first question is, how much is this going to cost me, Mike? And I said, I'll get that to a minute, Steve. Just relax on that. His next question is, how much resources is this going to cost me, Mike? And my answer was, well, it's going to cost you me for a bit to continue attending these meetings and get this set up. And he said, all right, I can put up with that. What else do you need? I said, I need the city infrastructure. I want you to open up the city infrastructure, put that on the table, and tell the PPPs that they now have an opportunity to utilize this to build out the networks we need to build out across Canada. I then got in a conversation with the mayor, shortly thereafter with Steve, the deputy city manager, and it was agreed to. So here's what we're going to provide, the LTE testbed in Ottawa, and I'm going to tell you where that's led and where we've gone with that. So we will provide some of our buildings. They're all up for negotiation. If you need them to build out this network, we'll allow you to do something with them, not for free, but we'll allow you to utilize them. The public safety towers have now been opened in Ottawa. They are no longer closed. As long as it serves the city's needs, we will open them up and allow people to use them. We've allowed the resources, so far me, to continue with this. And the most interesting part with any test that you have to do, particularly with an LTE testbed, is you need something real. So we are putting all three of the services, paramedics, police, and fire, in vehicles, allowing people to install equipment in them because we have people who travel through these areas constantly and utilize the equipment on the 700 network that they're building. So it's going to be live testing. CSS and CRC are both then looking, as well as CATA, are both then looking for industry who wants to test equipment. So it was interesting. I was just at a CATA forum last week for 2 days, and we got into the discussions of there are 4 major people who are sponsoring this event, and I won't get into that part of the industry, who have 700 equipment available for us. So they have the routers, they have the BlackBerries hardened, and I do carry a BlackBerry, which is good news for everybody here, for RIM. And we are going to provide those services to the LTE testbed. Now, the key to this is, once I announced that, and I announced that on a couple of programs with Barry, all of a sudden everybody's ears perk up because we need to increase the size of the LTE testbed. So Ottawa was also chosen to be a pilot for LTE. There is one other city that will be a pilot that will get announced later on. So what do we do with the LTE testbed, and how do we make this advantageous to industry? So if we can build it, and anybody who's been to Ottawa knows I call it the Queensway. It's the 417. It runs down the center of Ottawa. Yes, it's congested, and yes, you probably, if you had a bypass, you could go around it quite successfully. And we are going to build the LTE testbed down the 417 to, at one end, and I'm delighted to say this as well, Ottawa University. So academia is joining in on this as well. So the key to all of this, and where all the industry goes, is if we don't have academia seated beside us, doing the research, joining into this, and providing the expertise and resources they provide in these instances, we won't get this forward. So Rick wasn't here. One of his key elements and his key discussions with me that I've been having with him is that without that kind of support, this won't move forward. The LTE testbed that they have now around Alcatel is 15 kilometers in diameter. It extends over to Quebec, runs over to Gatineau, and will be all-inclusive. And I just got permission last week as well that Gatineau will join into the testing. So Gatineau will join into the testing. So this is really an interprovincial LTE testbed that we're running. Some of the things that will happen in the future with this is as City of Ottawa becomes a pilot for this, it will expand to other areas. So I was delighted to hear the conversations here of how we're going to use Wi-Fi. So as we picture this LTE testbed rolling out, remember there are many other types of connectivity, many other systems that we will join together. Wi-Fi is but one of them that will join into the public safety network. In essence, building around a commander's vehicle a Wi-Fi access point is probably an ideal situation that uses the backbone to go back through 700 for the LTE network. Not everything has to be LTE to work properly. It can all be built operationally or through the security that we're designed. So personally, I'd like to really congratulate Barry. Barry, I'd actually like you to take a little stand here for a second since you introduced us. So Barry has been the key, as CATA and iCanada have said here. He is the one person who continually has a smile. I've seen lots of doors closed. I've worked with him to open all those doors, and I congratulate Barry. Very, very well done.